Zambian President Michael Sata passed away last night. Joining us in studio to share his views on the late president is Ed Cropley, Southern African Bureau Chief at Thomson Reuters. Good to have you with us today, Ed, despite the bad news coming through. Maybe if you could walk us through the character of Michael Sata. You mentioned that he was quite a colourful individual.
Yes, no, there are a few people in Southern Africa who can lay claim to such a sort of a strong personality, a public personality that really grabbed the headlines. And personally, I remember interviewing him when he was still opposition leader, I think in 2009. And it's one of the most uncomfortable interviews I ever had. I was made to feel like a sort of 10-year-old schoolboy sitting naughtily at the back of the class. Very, very brusque character, didn't stand on ceremony, asked tough questions, really put people on the spot, wanted to make sure reporters had all the background information absolutely down pat, didn't suffer fools gladly. And really stamped his authority on the Zambian presidency. Of course, a lot of people maybe didn't like that. He had a very sharp tongue, not only with his political opponents, but sometimes with foreign investors, and especially if there were plans to lay off, say, large amounts of miners, as happened in the Copper Belt last year. So a controversial figure
that he introduced into the economy.
Lots of reforms, although sometimes, from an investment point of view, they weren't necessarily entirely favourable. He always had that very populist line, on the side of the workers. I think that was a legacy of his past as a union leader, and his dim, distant past. He had, of course, many hats throughout his career: policeman, a railway worker, famously at London's Victoria Station, and then ultimately president. And that leftist, slightly populist leaning, psychological leaning, didn't really ever desert him. And there's that famous incident last year, of course, with Cobra copper mines, who were trying to get rid of 1,500 workers, and he threatened to personally withdraw the mining license of the company. This, of course, is the biggest private employer in Zambia. Mysteriously, the work permit of the foreign chief executive of the company was revoked. So he was quite happy to play dirty if it suited his purposes.
Did that work to the benefit of the country, though?
I think the jury's still out on that. Obviously, the unions themselves liked that very high-level political support. At the same time, investors, taking the longer-term view, aren't really going to start ploughing lots and lots of money into new mining ventures and indeed new mines if they've got some of this sort of very aggressive, sometimes it might be said ad hoc policy making coming right from the top. So the jury is still out on whether he was a force for good or indeed a force for instability and bad for Zambia.
Was he a force for financial accumulation for his family? We do see this on the African continent often. I think Bongo is a great example, the postal worker who's one of the 10 richest people in the world when he died from Gabon. Was the late president of Zambia a wealthy man when he died?
There's certainly no evidence of that, and I think Bongo and Sata don't deserve to be in the same sentence at all in this point of view. He had a very large family, 20+ children. I haven't been through the genealogical records to work out exactly how many. He did have a very large family. But when he came to power, he stressed his back to basics, ethical Christian family principles. And nothing has really come to light to suggest that he deviated in any meaningful way in office from those ideas and those preachings.
It's a bit of a role model in certain ways. What about his relationship with the Chinese?
Very interesting. Before his election in 2011, he essentially didn't have a relationship with the Chinese. He used them very much as a populist political tub-thumping rallying point. Had scathing words for the Chinese, the Malaysians, the Indian investors. But the moment he's elected, who's the first person he calls? The Chinese ambassador. I think within 48 hours of his inauguration, the Chinese ambassador is sitting down having tea with him, hands across the table, sweetness and light. And in fact, there was really nothing concrete that emerged from his rhetoric in terms of policy towards China. So he used, like any canny populist political opposition leader, he used any single type of lever at his disposal. But then once he came into power, he knew exactly which way his bread was buttered. So a politician,
not a statesman?
I think that's true, yes. Yeah.
King Cobra was the nickname that they gave to him, clearly, as you mentioned, because of his very sharp tongue.
Yeah, that's true. And having felt it myself, I always make sure it featured prominently whenever we wrote about him. And in fact, on his desk in his offices in the Patriotic Front headquarters in Lusaka on Cairo Road, he had a little a plastic statuette of a king cobra, so used as a paperweight for all his minutes and note takings. So he clearly, he was actually quite proud to be called King Cobra. It's something that he felt quite happy with.
He sounds like a very dominant personality. With his departure, is it likely that the political landscape in Zambia will change?
He's been very polarizing during his time there. A lot of people are accusing him of exploiting ethnic divisions in Zambia. The ethnic divisions in Zambia are far more nuanced and less serious and tense, I suppose, than they might be in other countries. But they're still bubbling away beneath the surface, and Sata was accused often of exploiting these for his own political gains. Given his overall abrasive character, I think we're now going to see a period of greater consensus building, possibly within government and within the administration. His two successors, well, his two potential successors, I should say. We have Guy Scott, who's the official vice president, and then we have Edgar Lungu, who's the acting president. There's some confusion, a bit of uncertainty as to who is going to emerge as the interim Zambian leader in the 90 days until they have an election to choose a new president.
Is it conceivable that Guy Scott could be elected? The first white president post-colonialism?
According to the constitution, it's not conceivable, no. He could become president, but he could not run for president because of the Scottish parentage of his parents. So, although he is Zambian, he was born in Zambia, and so he has full citizenship rights. His parents didn't have full Zambian citizenship. Therefore, he cannot run to be president.
That's
but he can become president.
Does anyone else in the world
And
have
that's
that
law.
kind of a law? Yeah. I know in America you've got to be born in America to be president.
Yeah, I mean,
but not your parents. Otherwise, Obama wouldn't be there.
Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma, or now Myanmar, fell into a similar category because she married a foreign national. Her husband, Michael Sata, was a British academic. And so this precluded her from standing for the presidency in Myanmar. So it's the only similar sort of instance where I can see that arising.
Fascinating.
Ed, thank you so much for your time today, and clearly having experienced the sharp tongue of the King Cobra. Thanks for joining us today. That was Ed Cropley. He's the Southern Africa Bureau Chief at Thomson Reuters.